To the internal bit, if you want me to go straight to the external bit, I can do.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this second session of our COPS with me, Donna Jones, and
Olivia Pinckney, the Chief Constable.
So COPS stands for the Commissioner's Oversight of Policing Services, and one of the things that it's really important for me to do as your Police and Crime Commissioner is to put your questions and to hold the constabulary to account for the services that they're providing on all of our behalves. Now, for those of you who haven't joined one of these before, this is our second session, as I said. It's going to be going on for an hour from 6 till 7 p.m. It is being live streamed and also recorded so that people who can't make this hour are able to watch it back afterwards. So for any of you who are putting questions or comments in the chat function on either the Hampshire Constabulary Facebook page or on my Facebook page, please just be aware that people will be able to see your comments afterwards. We do ask you, of course, to keep your questions and comments as polite as you can, please. And we are going to do our very best to get through them all throughout the next hour. So I've got the first question here, which has come through from a Craig Gillam from the Isle of Wight, who asks to the Chief Constable, following the horrific attack of Sarah Everard, how are you trying to improve the functioning of the force and ensuring the relevant checks on staff are performed, not only on paper, but actually also with their mental health?
Yeah, thank you. And that's a really important question. And what happened to Sarah at the hands of a police officer is the most awful, vile, disgusting thing. And all of Hampshire Constabulary and all his colleagues around the country are equally appalled. And it's a really important question. So the first thing to say is in terms of vetting of officers and staff, and that of course has come to the fore and will no doubt come out in the fullness of time regarding the various inquiries. But here in Hampshire, what I can absolutely reassure you about is that all of our vetting, both when someone is recruited, but then also throughout their service, is absolutely on track. And we vet someone when they come in. We don't offer a job unless that vetting is complete, and they're also vetted every few years as per the rules. And it's important to kind of put that in context, that actually police vetting, as it's being done, and we're actually ahead of ourselves a lot in terms of the repeat vetting, is second only to the military and the security services in terms of not that just the initial vetting, but also the repeat. But it's not just a one-off thing. What happens every single year is that everyone, whenever they have any change in their circumstances, they have to sign and tell their supervisor whether their circumstances have changed, and then their vetting is redone. And again, we're absolutely on top of that. But I think vetting is a point in time, albeit regularly. The most important thing we can do is all of us be the eyes and ears for one another. And what we have, which is well used, is if anyone is worried about a colleague, we have a Confide in Me service, absolutely confidential, where they can say, I'm a bit worried about so-and-so. Exactly, it's a safeguarding thing, exactly as in a school, a teacher would say, I'm a bit worried about a child. It doesn't mean to say all balloons go up, but it does mean to say it's taken seriously and is looked at. And that's exactly the same with us. That's used a lot, it's used really healthily, and that gives us those tripwires, if you like, to think we need to look at this. So that happens, and we do, as you will know, take very seriously, if there are any breaches, then we are really robust, very transparent about being robust. So you will hear about it, and that's a good thing because we do show everything that's going on here, but we tackle it, we investigate it, and then people leave us. And that's what their colleagues here in the constabulary want. Nobody wants anyone who is going to use their position of power amongst them in policing. Nobody wants them here, rest assured. So that's how we deal with the vetting. In terms of their mental health, that again, thank you for that question. So when someone comes in, we're very careful, and we do a lot of questions when someone joins us, because policing is, a very challenging profession. We deal with high trauma, we deal with a lot of, really tricky, difficult societal issues. So people are asked all sorts of questions when they first join us. We do a lot of psychological screening, and again, we do that. And in some roles, more frequently and to a higher level, which I'm sure you can appreciate. And then we also do a lot in an officer's initial training, lots of kind of bite-sized chunks about how they can keep themselves well, physically, of course, but also mentally. And again, we work hard around buddy systems around the force for that to happen as well. It's something we take really, really seriously here in Hampshire Constabulary.
I have to say that when this first happened with Wayne Couzens, when he was arrested and then when he was sentenced, going back to, I think it was the end of September, Olivia and I had a really good chat. We sat down, we spoke about the vetting process, and actually I feel very happy on behalf of all of you that Hampshire Constabulary is one of the most thorough forces in the country in terms of its vetting process. And what we also need to remember, that what it appears with Wayne Couzens, and we need to wait for the inquiry to conclude, is that there was vetting done that did pick up issues, but they weren't, I understand, actioned or addressed. In Hampshire, that just simply wouldn't happen. And actually, the people that I've met in the course of my job that are the most offended and affronted by what's happened to Sarah Everard, apart from some female women's campaigners, are actually police officers. They are very, very upset and offended by what's happened, because when it's one of your own, it just hurts that little bit more. And so, yeah, I think it's been a shock to everybody. And as Olivia says, it's a real tragedy. If you've just joined us, thank you very much. And just to say, please get your questions coming in. We're going to try and get through as many as we possibly can. So questions, I mean, if you have a question for me, you're very welcome to put it, but this is obviously the opportunity to put questions to the Chief Constable, Olivia Pinckney, around services that Hampshire Police, Hampshire Constabulary deliver for the 2 million people that live across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So I have another question here that leads on from the previous question, which is to Olivia: how are you reassuring women and young girls that you are protecting them and keeping them safe? I think it's a really important point, actually.
It's a really important point, and one which has, again, come to the fore for very good and important reasons. And the first thing to say is we've always worked really hard at that in the constabulary, but quite understandably, more people are more alert, and that actually helps us all keep safe. So in terms of, nighttime economy, particularly as we're going towards Christmas now and, the party season, I'm really grateful to all of the licensed premises across all of our area. They have really taken up their responsibilities really, really energetically about women's safety and girls' safety at night as they go around. So, that's a whole load of things. So, there's a 7-point toolkit which the licensed premises have, and again, they've been really willing and really energetic around this. So having a champion member of staff every evening, making sure they're out looking for people who might be looking to prey on others, as well as who might be incapacitated through drink, and taking them to a safe area. Really great training for staff, making sure that they look at how their premises are designed, so that they're well lit, they've got good systems on the door, all those kind of things. And that's working really, really well. And in all of our areas, we've got a police operation which works hand in hand with that. And as I say, that's where we have everyone looking out for those who might be preying on others. And we've used community protection warning notices where we think someone, is looking to prey on women and girls. Then we will kind of basically issue them with a bit of notice. That's before a crime has happened. So we're effectively telling someone, stop what you're doing. We don't like what you're doing. And please curtail that behaviour, as well as really encouraging women and girls to keep themselves safe. In no way blaming them, because it isn't for them to be blamed at all. But if making sure they've got somewhere safe to go if they're worried as well. So all of that is in place. One of the more recent aspects which has come to the fore is drink spiking and needle spiking. We have had some reports of that. And we have made some, arrests along those lines as well. So again, it's making sure that everyone knows what to look for. And I would encourage anyone who thinks they might have been spiked, whether in their drink or with a needle, to come forward, and to come forward quickly, because the ability to kind of detect something in your bloodstream obviously degrades as time goes on. So please do that. But we have had some reports. It's not, an exponential rise. It isn't. I don't want to frighten people, but we have had reports, and I would really encourage people to come forward.
And I think there are also some good apps that are being used now. So there's the Home Office are really pushing a pilot for an app called Safe Streets. So it's an opportunity for anybody, male, female, adult, child, to report any areas, alleyways, underpasses, parks that aren't lit very well, if there are areas where you feel particularly unsafe, or you think that perhaps there are people hanging around to commit some kind of offence, whether it be sexual or otherwise, there is an opportunity for you to report that, so that that comes back through to the national app, but it will then come through to the local police force wherever you live. And I'll make sure that we get that link posted in the constabulary and also on my page, so that you can use that up if you want to. I've got another question here from Adele Fletcher, who says, I have a business in Andover, and I'm aware that in recent weeks there have been 4 incidents in the town centre involving a youth perpetrator brandishing a bladed article. This coincides with an increase in criminal damage of retail properties. Some residents feel there may be a small group of teams responsible. No arrest made yet. I'm further concerned to hear from the police that CCTV in the town centre is not switched on and available as a deterrent or detection. What more can be done?
As I sit here now, I haven't got the detail about the CCTV in Andover, but I absolutely will look that up and make sure that we come back to you. So forgive me on that specific point. More broadly, when there's any groups of young people with knives or other weapons, clearly that's a massive deal for them and causes a lot of fear more broadly. So we do take that really seriously, and we've had some really big successes around dealing with and protecting those young people, because often they're one and the same, but absolutely with that specific group, but then also more widely as well. So for instance, we've had our first gang injunction back up in Basingstoke. I know it's not Andover, but we have had that, and that was painstaking work by our dedicated missing, exploited and trafficked team, dealing with a particular group of young people who were really causing all sorts of frightening and massive disruption up in Basingstoke, and that's really helped kind of grab that and sort that out. We've had similarly, well, not similarly in terms of a gang injunction, but in Romsey, we've had an operation since September where there was quite a spike in young people's antisocial behaviour there. There was drunkenness, intimidation in shops, really unpleasant stuff. And we were really clear about clamping down that, and we put up what's called a Section 34 order, which is basically means that we can put dispersal powers in a certain geographical space. We have to have the evidence to do that. We can't just do that willy-nilly. We really need to have good intelligence, good calls in, good complaints, good support from shopkeepers and others, which we have had, which enable us to put that map around the area and get that dispersal order in place. So we do that, and there are lots of other examples I can give, Commissioner, but on the Andover CCTV, as I say, I will come back to you on that particular point.
And also, just worth noting that actually most CCTV is owned and controlled by councils, and the police have an agreement to use it. So if it's not there, it's perhaps one worth writing to your council and asking them what they're doing about it as well, because where the police can, they have a shared camera partnership, but ultimately the CCTV is on the street and under RIPA law is controlled. That's the regulation of investigatory powers. Listen to me, you can tell I've been a police commissioner for 6 months, is something that obviously councils are authorised and able to do. Actually, a really positive comment here from a Fraser White, who says, I think the police have had a particularly bad rap recently. I think this is following on from the Sarah Everard answer from Olivia. All because of the appalling actions of one individual. It was awful what happened to Sarah Everard, without any doubt, but equally important for people to get perspective on this and to understand that the police are there to protect us all. And actually, I cannot second that enough. I mean, as I say, every police officer that I've worked closely with over the last 6 months are people of the most upstanding moral integrity who are here to do a good job. Okay, so moving on, we've got 220 odd people with us now. So again, if you've just joined, please keep your questions and comments coming in. So following on from an earlier question about, this is a question about my police and crime plan, and this is from a Sean Byrne, who is asking where the voice for the rural crime in police and crime plan, who will that be? Will it be done by the IAG or parish councils, not just through the Hampshire Association of Local Councils? So in 30 seconds, I can say absolutely from you, the public, Yes, the IAG, Olivia's got her own, for those of you who don't know, independent advisory group, chaired by a fantastic professor from Portsmouth University, and a real mixture of people that live across the county, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. I actually attended the Force IAG, I think it was last week or the week before. They wanted to talk to me actually about rural crime as it happened, so that was really good, and giving me their feedback. So very much the IAG have a strong voice in that. But actually the landowners, the gamekeepers, the farmers, and people that live in those communities, particularly represented by parish councils, have an incredibly strong voice. But if you have an issue, please get in contact. Anything you wanted to add about rural crime?
Yes, I mean, certainly it's something that, you quite rightly hold me to account for. It's something within the constabulary that we do an awful lot about, and we're trying to be increasingly creative to take the fight to the criminals who do prey on people in our rural areas. Just this last week, actually, we've had a really great example working with neighbouring forces and our drones. We've recovered 2 cattle trailers, 4 horse boxes, all sorts of fuel barrels. So when we get the intelligence, we are using.
That's really
good. It was only last week.
Really good.
When we get the intelligence, we use our proactive skills, and we use all the technical kit we've got, and we go out and we do go after the organised nature of it. That's one example. The other one, which has been really in mind, and I know, again, Commissioner, you've quite rightly been very interested in, is speeding in the New Forest.
Yes.
So, because I think there's been nearly 100 animals hit, which is awful.
It's really
this
sad.
year. But working with the district council there, working with the rural community, working with the agisters, there have been literally thousands of letters sent out. We've also stopped over 200 vehicles, warned, ticketed, whichever is appropriate. So that the power of all those different eyes and ears is amazing. And community speed watch is a massive plus in the rural areas. And anyone who's involved in community speed watch, thank you. I think this last 6 months, something like 16,000 letters. And that's really powerful, because you get a notice saying, we've seen you.
Yes.
It makes people sit up and stop. So it's really great when that happens.
It does. That's a huge commitment from the public who are helping on that front.
Yeah.
That's really good. And actually, on the point that Olivia just made about the New Forest, and I have met with the leader of the New Forest Council, Councillor Edward Heron, and the Lord Verner there as well. And there is a pilot which I'm supporting in conjunction with Olivia's road policing team for a trial there on speeding, road safety, and a whole load of other bits and pieces to make one of the key roads through the centre of the New Forest safer. So that's something that's being supported by, as I say, the Hampshire Roads Policing team. Okay, so moving on, a question from Angela Hewitt, which says, how many new police will be specifically allocated to the Isle of Wight? Will they be replacing retired and leavers, or are these genuinely additional numbers? And another comment from Tony Hagan from Shanklin, again, same theme, how many extra police will there be? What other resources will we be getting?
Okay. So the Isle of Wight is absolutely getting its good share of our fine new officers. And to reassure you, when we talk about the Commissioner's ambition, which we're delivering, of upwards of 600 additional officers, they are additional officers. So before the uplift, we had 2,700 at the end of it. In March 23, we will have more than 3,300. So you can see that's genuine increase. So we recruit them, and we recruit those who very naturally move through policing, as they have always done, for good and positive reasons. We don't have people leaving us in very great numbers unless they come to their end of the career. So that is an additional 600. So the first thing I would say, and I always say this because it's true, is the Isle of Wight, as everywhere, is served from our control rooms. It's served from our online investigators. It's served from our people who investigate crime over the phone, if that's what someone prefers. They're served by our homicide teams, our sex offender monitors, all those, and those are some of them on the island and some of them remotely. We don't view the island's policing as something that if the people aren't dedicated there, they don't get served by Hampshire Constabulary. Hampshire Constabulary in its entirety is here for the Isle of Wight. But to answer the specific question, we have over 200 people who are based on the island, and there'll be an additional, well, so far there's been 10% more going in already. So you can see with over 20 new people gone in there already. So you can see how that's kind of panning out. But I'd really encourage you as an islander to think not just about those officers you can see and feel, important though they are, but actually you're served by, all 5,000 of us as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. And actually, because of the unique nature of the Isle of Wight, there are also some very specialist police officers on the island, which are just for the island. So if you think about, for example, if there was an incident involving a firearm on the Isle of Wight, the number of firearms officers in Hampshire compared to per head of population, actually you're much better served on the Isle of Wight, because your head of population for specialist police officers like that is actually far greater than here on the mainland in Hampshire. And from my perspective as your Police and Crime Commissioner, so the police estates comes under part of my office, and we are looking at the moment and working actually with Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service through a piece of work called One Public Estate, which is something the government encourages us, health partners, fire, police, councils to all work together. So we are working with Hampshire Fire and Rescue at the moment to look at improving the police station facilities on the Isle of Wight, and to improve and perhaps scale up slightly the custody, and also to make sure that the specialist services there have the appropriate buildings to work from, and that there's also a good geographical spread so the constabulary and the fire brigade are able to meet their response times, obviously. So that's something, it's a project I'm definitely going to be getting sort of my teeth stuck into at the beginning of 2022, and I will be sharing information with you. We've just secured, I think it's about £25,000 from One Public Estate, which the fire brigade put the bid in for, and that's going to fund our feasibility work. So as I say, I will keep you posted on some of that stuff.
Can I just add a little bit on the Isle of Wight? There was 2 weekends ago, there was the first real world policing and community day with the South Wight team, and over 700 members of the public turned up, which was really great, and it was brilliant for our teams to meet people as well, because policing is always, throughout COVID, has been out and about, of course, but to have the opportunity for members of the public in numbers to come and meet with us was great, and it gave our teams a real lift, and hopefully was well received as well, of course.
That's fantastic. That's really good. Well, talking about police buildings, I have another question here. As part of improving police visibility, I've had a question in about police stations in Winchester, Eastleigh and Bitton, and people asking if and when they will be reopened. So I'll quickly start off on this one, and Olivia can maybe talk about the needs from the police uplift programme. So yes, Bitton Police Station, as many of you will know that live in Southampton, was closed 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the things that I've done as the new commissioner since I've been elected is review the existing police estate that is still owned by us, but not yet sold. And actually Bitton is one of those. Now, there was a programme of work done beginning part of this year looking at opening Bitton Police Station. The numbers came back eye-wateringly large because unfortunately that police station has had its copper piping, its electrical cabling, that it has had a lot of stuff removed from it by people that shouldn't have been there and weren't allowed to be in there and taking those things. So it's not just a case of opening it up, giving it a lick of paint and refreshing it. There is a considerable amount of what we call NME that needs to be done in that building. So I am looking at an alternative premise at the moment, very close to the police station, and I'm hoping to be able to bring you some good news around that soon. It's certainly Olivia's wish to have a greater police presence on the eastern side of Southampton. They need that for their response and patrol teams and other things as well. So certainly that is the situation with Bitton. In terms of Winchester, well, actually, there's a lot of police in Winchester. My office, we're in my office right now, we're in Winchester, but also Mottersfont Court is right next to Hampshire County Council, which has an open desk, has a police desk. So actually, Winchester is pretty well served, and with some other roads policing units and other things, on the outskirts of the city centre as well in Winchester. And as for Eastleigh, yes, we are looking at options around improving Eastleigh. We do have a number of sites in that neck of the woods. Obviously, police, the old police HQ, Netley, where the call centre is, and lots of other police, specialist police buildings based there, not too far from Eastleigh. So in that, just in Netley. So yeah, anything you wanted to add about police estate, really?
No, thanks, Donna. And you've been hugely energetic around improving our estate, which I'm massively grateful for, and my staff are really grateful for as well. I think the other thing I would add, I agree with all of that. The other bit I'd add is that, putting technology in the hands of officers, which we're doing at pace, we've always had that, but we're upping it and upping it and upping it, removes the time they need to go back to their police station. So actually they can be out and about and visible, much, much, much more. So I don't want anyone plugged into a wall when they don't have to be. So that is, putting the power of technology, all the information they need, being able to kind of upload stuff direct, that is, is rolling out and is going down really well. So suddenly their, not just productivity, but also their accessibility goes up alongside that. But also I would just reiterate really the point that I made on the island. Only very recently, a big drug supply arrest by our roads policing team in Winchester. So again, people are well served by armed officers, dogs, roads policing officers. Winchester has its own dedicated, what we call high harm team, which is our proactive team who are really going after the people who cause most harm in every town and district and city. Winchester has one of those based as well. You won't necessarily see them because some of their work is behind the scenes and a bit less visible for very obvious and understandable reasons, I'm sure. But that team are there as well. So I'd really encourage to think about how else the policing of Winchester and Eastleigh is exactly the same. It is happening. So there are an awful lot of police officers, staff and volunteers on the streets of Winchester and on the streets of Eastleigh.
Actually, just whilst we're on police facilities and buildings, I wonder if it's worth you just telling everyone about the Joint Operations Unit, what that is and what it does, because we do share some quite specialist stuff with Thames Valley, don't we?
Yeah, so we share with Thames Valley a whole load of specialist policing. And using a health service analogy, it's kind of the acute services as opposed to the universal services. So that's roads policing, it's firearms at a number of levels of speciality. It's dog units, the maritime unit. You went out with them on a very cold day, not very bravely.
The police marine unit,
yeah, on a very cold day last week on the Solent. All of our operational planning, so the amount of effort that goes
horses
into
for football matches.
Horses for football matches, which Thames Valley own, but absolutely we use. Lots and lots of planning in our big events, whether that's Christmas, whether that's football matches, whether that's protests, whether that's in the summer festivals. Huge amounts of really specialist work that goes into that. We share that across Thames Valley as well as some of our counter-terrorism work, which is shared more broadly. So we share that with Thames Valley, and that enables us. That's a big geography that we have, but actually it's a real plus for the people of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight because we have such a big capability between the two of us that absolutely goes where the need is, and that is often across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight.
And I think we are really lucky here because actually outside of the Met Police, Thames Valley is the third largest police force and we're the fourth. So you can see that actually we are working, our buddy, our sort of, our brother force is actually a very big force as well. So it's a very equal amount of work that we're carrying. And as Olivia says, they have the horses, we have the dogs, and we really do share that. And if those services hadn't been shared over the years, I fear they would have been lost completely. And actually, we might have ended up with no capability to use police forces in public order offences. And actually, just to explain to you as well, that when we talk about other things, so Olivia just mentioned sort of counter-terrorism policing, and we've also got something called a ROCU, our Regional Organised Crime Unit, and that is shared, paid for by Hampshire, Thames Valley, Surrey and Sussex. So we work very closely with our bordering forces in terms of those things. Probation is done across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and then the Crown Prosecution Service is done on the Wessex footprint, which is Wiltshire, Dorset and Hampshire. So we've got CPS looking towards the west, we've got counter-terrorism and serious organised crime unit work looking more towards the east, and then north and south of Thames Valley for some of our, as Olivia said, the acute policing services. Okay, so moving on, there is a question here from a Damien Dalamar, who says, what does Hampshire Constabulary doing about youth crime? It seems that youth have no respect for the law and don't fear the repercussions.
So there's various levels to that. I've touched on antisocial behaviour, which is often committed by some, very few young people, but the implications are massive. And so I've touched on that. If I can touch on one area that does concern me at the moment in some of our communities, which is on antisocial motorbike behaviour. So
and actually, there is another question that's come in about that in Southampton.
do you want me to hang on to that?
No,
cover it. So that bothers me, and that has been particularly in Southampton, as you say, Commissioner. So we've and I know that's caused quite understandably a lot of angst in the city. We've got a team on it now, so we've got Operation Trail on it, really targeting that criminality, because antisocial behaviour tips into criminality, and in this space it has done. And there's been some pretty frightening incidents committed by some young people on some motorbikes. We've seized 11 so far, and we have a lot of people who are under investigation. They've been arrested, they're under investigation. That is live as I sit here now, and that has helped to an extent, but we're far from done. So we are looking to seize as many as we can. We're also having another look, and we need the College of Policing support in this, which we're working through, around the kind of tactics that we have available to us to tackle it, in terms of the method of driving and stuff. So we're on to that at the moment. But it is something that's concerns me. So that's where we are on the motorbike youth. More broadly, in terms of young people and crime, I think what we have a child-centred policing strategy. It's been with us over a year now. I might be slightly, but certainly many months. And that sits at the heart of what we do. That does a number of things. It listens to the voice of the child, and I'm sure you can appreciate there are lots of times where we need to make sure we're really listening. When a child's living with domestic abuse, whatever may be going on, really trying to hear the voice of the child and be the professionals in the room when that happens. So that's important. But we're also looking at, and we're working through your funding, St Giles's Trust, to deliver education, early intervention to a lot, around serious violence, to over 60 schools, and we're looking at year 6 and year 7 for that, because that's where the evidence takes us. We need to go to really kind of to sow seeds and help young people make good choices. Looking about knife crime, child exploitation, county lines, all that kind of thing, and that's through your funding. We've also got a whole load of really great resources online which schools, parents, carers can draw from. That's called Safe for Me, really well used around our area, so that young people and those who care for them can help you pick up the different tools they might need, whether it's drugs, whether it's keeping safe in cars, whatever it might be, it's there online. And we also have a dedicated team which is Operation Monument, where you've got really vulnerable young people who are often committing the crime that you're describing, but often have got real, what is it that's causing them to do that? So they try and look at the whole as well. But it really, comes down to, it's in your plan, zero tolerance on knife crime. We know young people often carry a knife because they think everyone else is. We need to break that cycle. We need to break that cycle, because that is where young people come to harm and harm each other. And it's where the Violence Reduction Unit particularly comes into its own, again, through your funding, has been excellent in terms of getting to as many young people as we can in whatever format that works, to help them to make good choices, keep themselves safe, of course, but also make sure that they are being respectful citizens within their own communities. And most are, we know that. But there are some who do cause problems and need to stop.
And I think it's very, very sad indeed. And credit to the police. I mean, there were incidents in Southampton over Halloween, and actually Olivia's district commander, who looks after Southampton for her, Superintendent Simon Dodds, has been absolutely, I think, first class in terms of the response that he's put up, particularly around Shirley, Redbridge and Millbrook. They've had flash mobs, so specific policing responses going out, particularly working at night. Olivia's given more resource for them to have extra people on patrol in the evenings, particularly up until sort of like 11 o'clock when they know the youth are out. Yes, it's getting colder now, so there'll probably be less young people out evenings and weekends, causing antisocial behaviour trouble. But the constabulary have stepped up very quickly on that issue that's gone on, particularly on that western side of Southampton. Now, we know this is across the whole area. That's why I've set up an antisocial behaviour task group. We've got a meeting in a couple of days. One of Olivia's inspectors, Dave Humphreys, who is from the east of the county, is the lead officer on ASB for the force. So he and I are working closely together, and I've put a pot of money aside, £100,000 aside out of my budget to spend money on either commissioning charities to support issues where there are, for example, in Portsmouth, the hot walls, young people jumping off the hot walls in the summertime. It might be we, ask Motivate to go and do some specific outreach, or the River Hamble with kids jumping into the River Hamble, very dangerous in a very busy part of the marina there. Again, getting some outreach. Or it might be a more practical solution such as CCTV, lighting, cutting back hedges, putting in new gates or Z gates, in alleyways so that people can't escape on dirt bikes or on motorbikes or e-scooters very, very quickly. So lots of work being done. But for me, the key thing is about winding this back as to why young people actually want to commit these crimes in the first place. What is going on across society that makes somebody want to go out tonight with a box of matches and set fire to a cricket club pavilion or to a bin shed in a block of flats and call the fire brigade out? Actually, policing is not the solution to this. Policing is called when it goes wrong. We've got to stop as a country, the government, as a society, we've got to stop young people from growing up wanting to do this in the first place. And there are some other things that I'm doing. Perhaps I'll cover that at another time to explain what I'm doing to work around trauma-informed practitioners to try and prevent young people from growing up and being quite broken and quite angry with society to the point where they go out and harm each other and ultimately often themselves as well.
Can I just add, I agree with entirely on that. Can I just add a little bit around that Halloween weekend in Southampton, because it did kind of, as you say, kind of really bubble up very quickly. And one of our dog handlers was absolutely fantastic and had fireworks thrown at him and his dog, but he deployed the dog in. The dog got injured, but is now perfectly well, but the dog got attacked along the way. But they made great arrests that night, and it did stop. It wasn't repeated as a result of that. So some real bravery as well by some officers and by some dogs.
Yeah, and the thing is when things go wrong, it's all covered in the press and people see it on Facebook. When you hear the good news stories about arrests being made and about the police doing good work, unfortunately it doesn't get the coverage. So very often you guys will only be seeing one side of the story. So I think it's important that we do present, Olivia is presenting the other side there too. Okay, so moving on, we've got a question here from an Ian Butler. I reported things on 101 several times online, however, nothing seems to have been actioned. And Gavin Roberts, do you respond and follow up on online reports? And a Shannon Dawn Smith, what is the point of coming forward at all if there is only a 2% conviction rate between 16 and 20? Let's keep the Shannon Dawn Smith one separate, because I've got a feeling that 2% from 2016 to 2020 may be around sexual offences, but perhaps, I'm only guessing, I don't know. Shannon, if you wanted to confirm what that was about, but certainly Ian and Gavin's points around 101 and online reporting.
Yeah. So one of the things you've rightly pointed out, Commissioner, and we're working hard with, because when we get the reports in, rest assured we do things with them. But what I know we're not as good as we should be at, and you pointed out, and I know we're going to work hard together on, is closing that loop so it doesn't go into a big, a vacuum. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rest assured it doesn't, but you've just got my word to say for that, because I know at the moment what happens is all the calls come in, and to give you a sense of scale, we have every day 750 909s, 1,000 101s, and 250 online reports of things, of all manner of things. All of those get captured, all of them get looked at. And I am sorry to say that you're not hearing back, rest assured that is, though, going into the neighbourhood team so they can start to build a picture. Like I said earlier about antisocial behaviour or us doing drugs warrants, that relies upon that level of information coming to us. So it is absolutely used to build that, but what we're not as good as we should be is coming back and letting you know that. So that is something that I've really heard loud and clear, and we are looking to build upon. So please don't give up telling us. And you know, when people ring 101, our average call response time is much less than 3 minutes. I would argue there aren't many people that one rings up, many services you ring up, that your average call pick-up time is less than 3 minutes. But so I do want to kind of sometimes push back on that, because I think there are the myths which are not borne out by how quickly we are answering what is a non-emergency call. But there are other ways of telling us things, so please use the online ways as well. If it's not an emergency and you just want to tell us something, please, you know, that may be much, much easier for many people, use the online service. But each and every one is looked at, each and every one builds a picture of what's going on in a street, a neighbourhood, a community, and it helps us both direct patrolling, but it also helps us work out how we can best, you know, help a new area get safe, do some drugs activity, whatever it might be. Speeding is another good example. If we know that reports are coming in, it helps us put our speed enforcement people into those particular areas. So it does make a difference.
And I just really want to back that up as well, actually. You know, since I've been elected, I've had the opportunity to obviously go to the call centre, to Netley, to have a look at where the 101 and the 909 calls come into. And actually, when people have repeatedly said to me for over a year, nearly 18 months now, what's the point in reporting a crime, nothing ever gets done about it, I can only support what Olivia says. It absolutely does. So if you've had your one mirror kicked off, if you've had your shed broken into, whilst you may not get a forensic team deployed, or perhaps even a police officer coming to your house, the reason they wouldn't come to your house is because to come to your house, they need you to effectively sign a statement, and that's why they would be coming to you. They can gather all of that information online if you do online reporting via the Hampshire Constabulary website, or by doing it on the telephone. So there are lots of ways they can get the information that they need. Now, if they then found that there was Joe Bloggs living in X Road around the corner that had kicked off 10 wing mirrors and broken into 20 sheds and whatever, they found that from Ring doorbell cameras or whatever it may be, and the prosecution is taken forward, they would then come back to you to get you to sign that statement. So as and when it's needed, there is that. Now, my challenge back to the constabulary is you're doing all this work, you're feeding it back to your neighbourhood policing teams every day, literally sometimes twice a day. They are getting the reports from 101 all the time and from 999 about the information. What the constabulary hasn't been good at, and it's not Hampshire, this is all police forces, is giving updates back to the public about what's going on. And I think, you know, understanding the situation, it's been because of a lack of policing numbers over the tail end of austerity, and it's been about focusing your efforts where you need to get the work done. And then the bit that got left by the wayside was perhaps just feeding that little bit back. Now we've got the uplift programme. Now Olivia's going to have more staff working in the call centre. There is an opportunity now to just make a few tweaks to start to rebuild some of that confidence. So please, please don't think that nothing gets done and nothing happens, because actually I can assure you, as your police commissioner, as the person who works for the public, there is honestly information that goes on from all of those reports. And if there are issues of a suspicious man or wing mirrors being kicked off or outbuildings being broken into, when the police have got 10, 12, 15 reports of a similar nature over a 2-week period, they will start to put people on more patrols at night time or whatever time of the day the offences are happening. They will link it up to say, hang on, has a burglar just been released from prison that lives in this area? Can we connect it up? There's so much stuff that goes on. And one final thing is, if you go onto the Hampshire Constabulary, if you Google Hampshire Constabulary report a crime, you'll come up with a set page on the Hampshire Constabulary website. When you click on it, it's not particularly user-friendly. It's a white background, lots of text, it's quite small, and you have to kind of scroll down and find the bit and click on report a crime, and it's not an emergency. And now this is not down to Hampshire Constabulary, it's part of a national reporting crime function that's done through the Home Office. So we're pushing at the moment for the constabulary to be able to redesign their own page. So when you come on, it's, do you want to report a crime? Yes, click. Bigger font, much easier for you to report a crime and to make it a lot more user-friendly. Excuse me. I'm also working with Olivia's team on whether or not we're going to end up having a police app. It might be a police app is a bit fiddly, and actually just having a really good homepage that we can have a QR code linked to. We can push that link to that page across all of our social medias. And that might be all that's needed. But certainly, some of you have given me feedback the page is not that great. I did challenge the constabulary on that, and their response was, we know, but unfortunately we're part of a national programme. And if you Google any police force in the country, Norfolk Police Report a Crime, Gloucestershire Police Report a Crime, you'll come up with the same homepage. So it's a national format at the moment, but it is being looked at. Okay, so moving on. We have seen this week the reintroduction of restrictions because of the new strain of COVID. How will policing respond to this, and what lessons have been learned from the previous period of restrictions, and how were they policed?
So yes, we are back with some legal requirements, aren't we, in England, as of the last few days. So to answer the question, I mean, it is very specific around mask wearing in shops, and then the restrictions on quarantining and isolating if you've been in touch with someone who's had the particular Omicron variant. So that is clear. From a policing perspective, we are going to pick up very much exactly as we left off. And I say that with confidence because we surveyed, it seems ages ago now, but it wasn't, was it? We surveyed so much about were we getting that kind of line right. And you'll have heard me say about the 4 E's several times. That's exactly where we are again now. So we know how brilliant people across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight and our cities were over the many, many months of last time. And I'm equally confident, and I'm hearing already, even though it's only a very few days, that that's exactly how people are behaving now. So, where we are is looking at the 4 E's. So we really want to engage, explain, encourage. We will only enforce where we really need to, but we're not afraid to if we must. If someone is being really, really blatant, I think egregious is the word, in just not doing what the law requires them to do. But also, from our shops, we've and that's where the local authorities have been great, as well as the shops themselves, just putting back in place that gentle reminder: if you do forget to put your mask on, put it on. And for most people, that works. So that's where we are. We if people are worried, and there's if anyone's in a shop and they're worried, then use your normal contacts 101 999 if you're afraid about someone's behaviour and you feel you're at risk. Please do use that. But I'm really confident that actually we're picking up where we were before. The mood was very positive last time. I've been clear with my staff about where they should really use those first 3 E's before the fourth. We are not sitting outside shops pointing out mask wearing. We weren't last time. We're not doing that again. That's not what you want from your policing, and it's not the kind of style of policing that we need to do for this. When it comes to needing to quarantine if someone flies back in, or isolating if someone's been in touch with that particular new variant, that's something that very much rests with health services, with track and trace. It is very, very, very unusual for policing to have to get involved in that. We did last time, but it was very infrequent, and I don't expect that's going to change.
Thank you very much. That's a good answer. Just a question around PCSOs. Some forces have got rid of their PCSOs. What's your commitment to them?
Yeah. So, to my knowledge, I might be only right, but I think there's only one force, but I may be wrong, who decided to dispense with PCSOs. I'm really committed to PCSOs, and we have a really good coverage across our constabulary area. And I know it's something that's really important to you, Commissioner, as well. So we have a brilliant cohort of PCSOs. Some of them over the last couple of years have chosen to become police officers, which is great in one sense, and hooray for them. But I know that means we're recruiting into those posts, which we are doing. And like anything, it takes a while, doesn't it, for anyone in a new job to kind of get upskilled, get confident, and become really effective. But we are absolutely recruiting up to wherever those gaps are. But I know sometimes there can be a bit of a time lag when someone leaves and someone else is being in training. That is the nature of the beast to an extent. But I think they're fantastic. I love the fact that PCSOs are very much in their communities. They're the face of their communities. They know what's going on. I love, when I talk to them, wherever they are, they really know what's going on their patch. And that's phenomenally powerful in terms of, yes, nipping things in the bud, which is really where they come into their own, but also being a really trusted place where people can share other concerns, and that can come into policing and help build that picture of intelligence that I was talking about.
I mean, I've been out on a couple of beat surgeries and walkabouts with neighbour policing teams, and I have to say that the public really do massively value their PCSOs. And I went to a beat surgery in Mitchell, Devon, just at the beginning of the summer, not long after I'd been elected, and one lady brought along some marmalade she'd made for one of the PCSOs. So, you know, they really can be a real member of the community, and particularly in smaller villages as well. I just want to go back, if we can, to Shannon Dawn-Smith's question. Now, Shannon, I haven't got the update from you on this, but I'm assuming that the question around the what's the point in reporting crime, or all so much what's the point in coming forward is the word you used, if there's only a 2% conviction rate, I'm pretty sure that is in relation to probably rapes and sexual offences. So I'm going to ask Olivia to address that one, please.
Yeah, so on rape and serious sexual offences, I am deeply frustrated by the low conviction rate. And when I talk with my peers, whether that's in the Crown Prosecution Service, the Court Service, probation, witness care, and you know, Donna, you chair the Local Criminal Justice Board, where all of those different agencies come together. We are really frustrated by it. We have, to give you a sense of scale, about 2,500 rapes reported to us every year, which is the same as we have house burglaries. I know there are plenty that aren't reported. What I would ask, if you don't want to come to the police, go to someone, tell someone. You know, we have fantastic charities in our area. Go to them, get some help, because that is the most important thing. But I would encourage people to come to the police, because A, we can help get you that support, but also by going to prosecution, whether that's a formal criminal justice route, and we also have civil powers that we can really restrict a perpetrator's behaviour as well. So if you come to us, we will listen, we will believe you, we will work on what you've told us. And there are loads of different routes available to you. So if it's criminal justice and it's going to court, we will be with you every step of the way. At the moment, that's taking longer than any of us would want. We know the impact that COVID has had on our courts, but you know, that is a route, and I'd really love to be able to put more people behind bars for this most vile crime. It is the most serious crime that you can survive. And I want people to be convicted, and I want them to be prevented from doing it to anyone else. But if that isn't right for you, for whatever reason, I respect that. There are civil ways that we can put various wraparounds a suspected perpetrator without them going to court, but we can also, really importantly, help someone rebuild from this most awful, disgusting, invasive experience. And that isn't, you know, just dedicated officers. It is some fantastic third sector experts in that kind of work, and we can help signpost to someone towards that. But to reassure you, I have 100 dedicated investigators, 100 dedicated investigators who do fantastic work day in, day out around investigating rape. And in fact, only, just bear with me, because there's a really powerful example that struck me only very recently, whereby, you know, we never give up on this. So only last week in Winchester Crown Court, we had a rapist convicted of multiple rapes, which were perpetrated against children, but back in 2007. Of course, those children are now adults, and we have worked through and some of that was old legislation in today's world and all that kind of stuff. We don't give up on rape investigations, however long ago they were. So please, if anyone has suffered that awful crime, come to us. If you don't feel you can, look online. There are loads of brilliant charities funded by the Commissioner. But, you know, I am not going to give up on that conviction rate. It is a really complex problem, but believe me, it is not about not being believed and not being skilled by investigators, because you will be believed. Come to us, and I have brilliant investigators who purely specialise in this work.
I think that's such an important issue, and as Olivia said, through police commissioners, we are, you know, I fund sexual violence advocates and counsellors all across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and actually you can go to them and have therapeutic counselling work with them without even going to Hampshire Constabulary. So some people, the constabulary want to know about all the crimes that are committed, but even if you report it and say, I want you to know about this, but I don't necessarily want to take it forward, we can make sure, the constabulary will make sure you're linked up to the services that I do commission, and that is absolutely key. And for some people, it takes years for that harm and for them to acknowledge that actually perhaps what happened to them when they were 9, 10, 11 wasn't right. Something will trigger a memory, it'll come back, and they will then find that's the right time in their life to come forward and report it. But actually, Shannon, in terms of your specific point, actually statistics and lies, let's say, just to quantify what was going on in 2016. So and I've looked at these numbers really, really closely, because as well as being the commissioner here, I'm also the national lead for victims. And I did give evidence at the Home Affairs Select Committee on the rape investigations and prosecutions process last month. And you can look on my Facebook page and you'll see the evidence. I've clipped it to about 7 or 8 minutes of a specific part of the evidence that I gave. And in Hampshire Constabulary in 2015, there were, from memory, about, I think it was around 1,000 rape cases reported, and 120 prosecutions that led to convictions or some kind of outcome. The following year, in 2016, the number of rape cases went up to about 1,500, and the number of prosecutions dropped slightly, but in the same ballpark at 116. Now you fast forward to the number Olivia's just given us, 2,500, 2,800 rape cases per year. Now there's a key reason why that has spiked. It's not because there's a lot more rapists living in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight or anywhere else in the country. It's because the government introduced a piece of legislation called CDI, Crime Data Integrity, which meant that if somebody came forward and said, I was raped today, and by the way, I was also raped 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So whereas before the police would adapt with the emergency, that the situation of that rape that's happened right now police forces also have to log, even though they're not necessarily going to investigate because there potentially is no evidence, or the victim doesn't want them to, they still have to log those 3 other rapes that are reported from many years ago. And sadly, with many men and women who find themselves in these situations, that they often are not raped just once. If you are someone who's been living in a traumatic, very trauma, in a very dysfunctional family with a lot of issues going on, perhaps these are things that have happened over a number of years. So whilst it looks like the number of rape cases has spiked hugely over the last few years across Britain, actually it's because the police are now recording everything that's historical as well, even if the victim doesn't want it investigated. The second thing is, yes, there has been a drop in rape prosecutions over the last 4 or 5 years from the Crown Prosecution Service. So in Hampshire, even though we're approaching 3,000 rape cases per year, last year the number of prosecutions that went forward were 56 cases. However, this year, we're both assured by our new Director of Crown Prosecution Service, they're approaching the 100 mark again for 2021. So by the end of the year, there should be over 100 cases. So we're getting there. Things are improving and things are getting better. Now, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We've got 2 minutes left, and I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been with us for the hour. If you do have other questions, please send them through anyway, because as last time in September when we did this, I went online afterwards, and we've got other staff who are working with us, supporting us, who will also be online and helping to answer questions and respond to you. And I think finally, a Christmas message from our Chief Constable around being safe at Christmas.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, I always feel like the harbinger of doom with Christmas messages, but I hope that everyone is able to have a Christmas with friends and family and celebrate out and about this year in a way that none of us could last year. Please keep yourself safe. Please think about drink driving the next morning as well as on the night itself. The next morning, one is so susceptible to that. Please keep your presents safe. So keep them away from the windows at home. And of course, as we're going out enjoying, the lights, the crowded spaces, the Christmas markets, all of those kind of things, just keep, your eyes peeled. And if you're worried about anything, just ring, and we'd rather all be safe than sorry. So, but I do hope everyone has a really great Christmas. Thank you.
And the final thing from me before we say goodbye is I launched my police and crime plan last week. It's called More Police Safer Streets. You can go to www.morepolicesaferstreets.com or have a look on my Facebook page for a link to it, and it sets out my 9 key strategic policing priorities for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, which I've discussed with the Chief Constable. They have all been written in consultation with all of you from the fantastic 8,000 of you who responded to that survey. So thank you so much. We're going to be doing another one of these after Christmas. Please keep an eye on both Constabulary, Hampshire Police Commissioner and my own Donna Jones social media for the next date, and keep your questions coming through. Have a lovely Christmas and we'll see you soon.